you get signed, you're on a label. How do you get a relationship with Biggie? Because I mean, I'm sure lots of people ask you this and how you get a track with Biggie, but what is that journey like?
Actually, that was kind of easy for me because the guy that I signed to, Mark Pitts, was actually Biggie's manager at the time. You know what I'm saying? And so it just made sense, not only from a, from a perspective of, oh, I got my signed artist and I got Big, I got to get them together. But then it also, at least for Mark, from a financial perspective, it's like, it just makes sense that I get Big on my artist record so that our label can, achieve what we're trying to achieve. So, I'm thankful and grateful, every day and all the time that I would land it in that situation where it was that easy to be able to create a relationship with the late great. You know what I mean?
And how was that? How was it? Did you record together? Like, how was
Yes.
that relationship and how was the creative journey?
Oh man, it was beautiful, man. I mean, that particular song that we did, "Keep Your Hands High," we spent time in the studio about 8 hours in the studio. And it wasn't just go in the studio and record the record. It was, literally a bonding moment. We had a chance to talk about any and everything, you know what I'm saying, in the process of being creative. But then, to see his process during the time was mind blowing because he didn't use a pen or a pad. He, we would have conversations and then you just see him black out in the middle of the conversation, just start doing this, and then he'll come back in and talk, da da da, and then he'll back out, but sitting in the chair the whole time. And then he'll start doing this. And then after a while, I'm like, yo, what are you doing? And he said, yo, chill, chill. And then the last time he said, okay, I'm ready. This is like 7, 8 hours later. And I was like, ready to do what? He was like, I'm ready to get in the booth. I said, where's your pen and your pad? He's like, nah, I can't write it down. It confuses me. And I didn't understand what that meant. And eventually I did. And that's because he didn't write it down because Big had a style where he said more with less. He was very, very, very the most efficient MC that I know with regards to word selection, syllable selection, and where to place them inside of a track. And then, you know, doing that in his head because of the way he wrote, it was easier for him to write it in his head and then transfer it to the mic as opposed to writing in his head and then writing it down and then transferring it to the mic because you can't get the inflections that you need by trying to read it off of a paper. And so again, I didn't understand that then, but I understood it now. It's like eliminate the middleman. Just while you're writing, learn it. You know what I'm saying? Repetitive. Say it over and over and over and over and over again. And then by the time you're ready to get in, on the mic, it's easier for you to transfer from here to there. You know what I'm saying? So, it was definitely an eye-opening experience and probably the single most impactful experience that I had as a signed artist at the time.
Well, when you're telling me this, I find it unbelievable that he didn't write his own lyrics down because for me, it's hard enough to remember a question that I want to ask. And then I'm like, oh my God, I forgot what I was going to ask, let alone 8 hours in the booth, having a conversation and still in the back of your mind, having, a rhyme scheme together. And his rhyme schemes are so impressive. And I think what you touch on is actually something that artists have touched on before, but remembering and learning your bars off by heart is very different to reading them and delivering them because you can add feeling if you're not reading because it's just coming and you can add inflections and like for anyone, if you want to remember a song, like just remember lyrics to a song and you can start playing with the way you deliver it, the speed, and then you can start to understand that. Like, I'm not a rapper, but
you hit it on the head. You hit it right on the head.
Yeah, but I remembered Big Pun Twins, and I just remembered, and so just so I could just play around in my own time and start to understand what you could do, and so it just shows you that you can play with flow, that once you have it off by heart, you can do a bunch of different things. You can do a slow part, a fast part, and that is the essence to the true artist in a way.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And the thing that you were doing in the camera for the audio version of this, he was like turning in a circle, like he was just like slowly going around in a circle. It's like almost he's getting the groove on, and then he's coming through. But were you writing while you were with him? So you were writing things down, and he was just going in.
Yeah. Yep. We were both talking and writing at the same time. It's just that he was writing up here and I was writing like this. So it was like, you know, the beat, because the beat's playing in the background. And so, you know, his blackout was this, mine's was and I'm still listening to the beat. I'm not really rocking with it like this at the time. Because I had heard the beat, you know, before I got in there too. So I kind of had a rhythm of what, you know, how I wanted the bounce to go. But with it being in the background, it still provided a great backdrop for me to be able to, you know, kind of as I'm talking and as we're doing other stuff to understand what's happening. And then boom, once we had a conversation about the concept, once we had that, you know, it was off and running from there.
And obviously you guys go back and forth on the track. It's not just his verse, your verse done. You go back and forth for multiple verses. When you heard him, did it influence what you did?
Not until we got to the last, my last 8 bars, because we were in such a pocket and such a groove. I felt like my last 8 bars wasn't intact, intact with what we were doing. So, and then especially, you know, also because that his last 16 was so bananas, is like what I had didn't complement what he had just said. So that's when I had to kind of go back and do my last 8 over again after I heard his last 16, because everything else, his 8, my 16, his 8, and then my 8, and then his 16 were all in pocket. And there was that last 8 that I just didn't feel like it fit. You know what I'm saying? So that's when I had to go ahead and do that one over.
And how did you feel after the session? Like the session is done. Like,
oh, we got one. That's what I thought. We got one. I knew it was piping hot. You know what I'm saying? Like I knew it from the time he started off. I said, oh yeah, this is gonna be a monster. You know what I'm saying? Like there was no doubt in my mind. You know, number one, because it's big. And I knew that, you know, just because it's big, no matter what he said, just because it's big, but you knew what Big was going to do was going to be incredible. But because it's big, I was like, yo, people going to listen. But I was like, okay, and that's all I need. That's all we need. Because if you listen, it's a wrap. We'll take it from here. That's how I felt. You know what I'm saying?
And how did you ride that wave? Like, you know, that is a moment in like, it's like a dream moment, because Biggie is, without saying anything else, everyone knows who he is, what he stands for, the skill set that he came through. But what did that do to your career, and what did that do to your kind of, you know, mentality moving forward?
It was a gift and a curse, honestly. It was, I knew we had something, but then there were other factors that I didn't consider that came in the fold. Like, you know, there were some people that were kind of envious that I had a record with Big, because they hadn't had a record with Big. You know, in my mind, at least that's the energy that they came off with. There was the whole issue of trying to get the record cleared and being able to, you know, advertise that Big was on the record. Because if you look at Many Faces, the album, you don't see Big's name anywhere mentioned. That's because we weren't given rights to advertise, market, and promote that Big was on the record.
So why was that?
I mean, that's something you would have to ask the higher ups. You would have to ask the people, the good people over at Bad Boy, why we couldn't get clearance. You know what I'm saying? You know,
do you have a perspective? Like, if you put their hats on, do you have a theory?
The only thing that I can come up with is that he was dropped, because me and him dropped the same day. And the only theory that I can come up with is that he was dropping, you know, around the same time. But then I'm also thinking, but why? How could I, as a lesser known artist, affect the sales of the late great Notorious B.I.G.? So, you know, even that rationale sounds, you know, kind of shaky to me. So I don't know. I don't know.